Hello, Garland Nixon here. It's Thursday at noon, and we got a great hour ahead of us hanging out with the one and only professional cynic, Mark Sleboda. Let's talk. That's weird. I was just looking at my other. Let me see if it comes up. Just making sure you're there, Mark. Just making sure you're there.
I'm here.
Yeah.
You disappeared on me.
Okay, that must be what it is. We're disappearing on each other. Okay, there you are. You're there, Mark. Okay, we're good.
Yep.
We are hanging out. All right, I think we're getting somewhere. All right, Mark Sleboda. Now, before we get going, we gotta. I know what you're thinking. Where can I find all things Mark Sleboda? I can't get enough of the brilliance of Mark Sleboda. We're gonna make it easy on you. Guess what? All you got to do is go to boosty.to/therealpolitique, and there you will find all of Mark Sleboda's good works. And guess what? We're up to 145 subscribers. 5 more, and we will be at 150. We're shooting for 175. We're shooting for 175. And we will be there hopefully within the next week or so. So we're at 145 subscribers. Make sure you go there and subscribe. You can chat, you can donate, and of course, everything that's happened. Look at that. All of the episodes, where he is, what he's doing, you name it, his thoughts. Follow him on. Make sure you follow him on X and all of that kind of stuff. Telegram, you're on Telegram, aren't you, Mark?
Yes.
Follow him on X. Yes, but most importantly, go to Boosty, follow him there, and become a subscriber. All right, let's get going, Mark. Let's start here. I do want to start with actually big things going on the battlefield, Petrovsk and Chasiv Yar. Mark, what's happening?
Yeah. Okay. Thanks for having me, Garland. It's always an honor and a pleasure to be on the show. Let's start with Chasiv Yar. Okay, Chasiv Yar it's really more of a fortified town than it was a small city. It was the fallback position of the Kiev regime's forces when they lost Bakhmut already more than 2 years ago. And Russian offensive actions towards Chasiv Yar itself began last April. So the fight of Chasiv Yar has been one of the longest fights of the special military operation, lasting more than a year. Very bitter fighting, at times very intense. At other times, it almost seemed an afterthought compared to other conflicts that were going on the battlefield. But it was always hotly contested. Sometimes it was very big, sometimes it was quite small, but it was always bitter.
Constant pressure, constant interactions.
And the Kiev regime kept throwing reinforcements after reinforcements after reinforcements to hang on to it as long as they could. And to the last suburbs of the city itself took like nearly 6 months to clear out. So now, what is important about Chasiv Yar is it finally closes the chapter on the central Donbass that began back with Soledar and then Bakhmut and
Avdiivka.
Avdiivka is a little bit further to the south.
Oh, okay.
But Bakhmut served an important central position. And even after Bakhmut fell, Chasiv Yar still played an important strategic and logistical position. But perhaps the most important thing about Chasiv Yar is the topography, the lay of the land. It is a high area. elevation wise. It is the top of a kind of a hilly plateau area that looks down, yes, towards the east, but now more importantly, it looks down towards the west. It looks down towards the Kiev regime's last defensive line in the Donbass that stretches from Kramatorsk, Slavyansk, and down to Konstantinovka. And I believe that Russia has kind of deprioritized Chasiv Yar in about the last 6 months. And most of that was because of timing. They have finished up Chasiv Yar just as they begin moving on Konstantinovka in a big way. So timing and sequencing is very important for the Russian military. So they've got Chasiv Yar finally firmly under control, all the Kiev regime's forces ejected, and they've now got these nice heights from which they can surveil down this last defensive line, right? Both reconnaissance-wise, artillery-wise. It is setting themselves up for a major battle this autumn. And that also dovetails in what's happening just a little bit to the south in the Pokrovsk area. Because Pokrovsk is now it's actually been in operational encirclement for about a month already. And with this big thrust breaching through behind the Kiev regime's defensive lines to the north and then to the west of Pokrovsk, this is a further big isolation and flanking of Pokrovsk. There's already there's been fighting in Pokrovsk itself, even in the downtown center of the city, for about 2 weeks now already. And what we keep hearing from the Kiev regime side, from their forces on the ground, is they're panicking. They're scared. They're desperate. One of the first things that they're so desperate about is they're quite open and honest about this. They do not have enough people, not by far, right? That is the biggest problem that they cite again and again. The second biggest problem that they have is what people they have are completely untrained, unexperienced. They're freshly conscripted, forcibly conscripted, and thrown into this meat grinder. So I mean, the thing about freshly conscripted, of course, is they're not good for much more other than defending a trench or a building. And as these commanders point out, they're not very good even for that. And increasingly, Russia is exerting very strong drone control as well. The Kiev regime's drones, of which they have come to rely as they run out of artillery and manpower and everything else. Their drone forces are being driven out of the Pokrovsk theater. So Pokrovsk is going to fall. The Kiev regime, of course, will try to hold on to it as long as they can. They keep throwing, again, reinforcements. But I don't think that this is going to be a situation like the year-plus battle for Chasiv Yar, or even the several-month battle for Avdiivka or others. Pokrovsk just isn't as easily defensible.
Let me do this, because I'm having a little trouble on the map finding it. Is it Petrovsk? Is it near Konstantinovka or Chasiv Yar?
Yes, it is to the southwest of Konstantinovka. Yes.
Okay, so it's just not showing up on this, I guess, map. Not down toward Toretsk, but in the other direction.
No, the other way. Yeah, the other way. Yep.
Yeah, I guess it just doesn't show up on this.
There, you see Mirnograd? It's right north of Mirnograd.
Oh, okay.
South of Mirnograd. Right there, Pokrovsk. You see, Mirnograd is in bigger letters, and then
there you go. Gotcha. Oh, it's
Yep.
just further away than I thought. Oh, it's not all that far from
Mirnograd is
Donetsk.
essentially a suburb of Pokrovsk. Their
Oh, yeah,
labeling is
gotcha.
very bad.
There we
Pokrovsk
go.
should be highlighted bigger than Mirnograd population-wise. There you go.
Gotcha. Oh, okay. It's
So
it's further
Russian
away.
forces are already, they've slanted north of Mirnograd and Pokrovsk and then to the west. So they've really physically, increasingly, not just operationally cutting them off with drones and artillery, but physically as well. So it's in a very bad situation. It's a very hard area to defend.
Where does their supply lines come from for Petrovsk?
Right now, what supplies they're getting in at this point is coming mostly via dirt roads to the west, in the Dnipropetrovsk region. Okay. That's where they're getting most of their supplies at this point, and it's not regular.
I was going to say
they have to run. They have to run the gauntlet of artillery and drones to get anything into Pokrovsk at this point at all. And this is already, the area around Pokrovsk is already transitioning to the steppe area. So it's not like this hilly, forested area. It's much more open. And when you have an opponent that has air superiority, drone superiority, then artillery superiority, it's a much more difficult situation for the defender than, say, situations in some of these more fortified locations in the Donbass proper, like Chasiv Yar, like Avdiivka, even Ugledar, were.
I wouldn't want to be the guy driving the truck.
No, you would not. No, I would think truck driver, that is a high octane, high risk, low survivability.
Uh-oh, Mark froze hopefully for only a moment. Darn it, Mark is frozen here. Well, let's just hope Mark signs out and signs back in, because we can't hear you if you, Mark. Mark has frozen. Maybe. I hope you can hear me, Mark. So what I'll do, I'll just kick you from the studio and then just come back in. Kick from studio. Kick guest. Okay, let's hope Mark just signs back in. That hopefully he got that. I'll send him an email and let him know. And I will just say, Mark, you froze. Mark Sleboda, you froze. Sign back in. There we go. Let's just hope that Mark signs back in. It happens. Keep in mind, he's in Moscow. We're here. But I think just to kind of go on, hopefully until Mark gets back in, we're looking for him. I think what we're looking at here is the situation on the battlefield where desperation is arising. It's starting to get obvious what's going on, and I think that's one of the things that is definitely affecting the other actions, such as the 10-day thing from Trump and all. I think that's desperation. I think to some extent, I think Trump knows 50 days is not good, because the way things are going for Ukraine, who the hell knows where they're going to be in 50 days. And sadly, pathetically, while I think the people around Trump knows that this whole idea of this whole concept, right? This is a concept. We have to force the Russians, right, into a situation where they will negotiate with us out of desperation, and then they'll take the deal we want, right? This is a concept, the Neocon concept, right? If we got to put pressure on the Russians. It ignores the reality. It ignores the reality that the Russians are winning. Let's hope for Mark. I don't know what happened. He froze up. It ignores the reality that the Russians are winning. It's typical neocon stuff. Let me tell you. Let's not forget, who was it? Was it General Tommy Franks who was talking about one of the neocons? I think it was Kenny Adelman in the during the Bush administration, and he said he's the stupidest effing man on earth. I had a friend who was an editor at the Washington Times, and he said at that back then he knew a bunch of the neocons at the Pentagon, and he agreed. He said these people were incredibly stupid, and they really believed the stuff that they said. And remember, this is what happens with ideologues. Sadly, it's hard for people like us to understand ideologues because ideologues they're true believers. They really believe that stuff. No signs of Mark. So when these people get together and they say, look, we'll do X, and that'll force the Russians to negotiate. While we look at it and we say, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. They couldn't really believe that, right? I've got a great book. Where is my book? It's around here somewhere. Anyway, it's called Voltaire's Bastards. Wherever it is, I don't know. But one of the things that Voltaire's Bastards talks about is how what we'll call the neoliberals, whatever you want to call them, the neocons, how they can create a reality and live in that reality, how they can create a certain thing, a set of beliefs, and they all live in that, and they all, within that concept, they think it's true. And that's where they, kind of live and survive. And I think that's what we're looking at. We're looking at a bunch of people around Trump who truly do believe, because they truly believe, look, we got to force the Russians, we got to put pressure on the Russians, and then they'll negotiate. And what they mean by negotiate is they'll accept our deal. And their deal is simple. We get to pause. We've lost the war. We need some time so that we can get ourselves together and get Ukraine rearmed and go back after Russia later. So we need some time. We need a pause for us to get ourselves together. We're losing. We need a pause so we can come back and try to win in the long run. The trouble is the Russians know that. And the Russians aren't going to give them that pause. And so it's forcing their hand. It's forcing their hand to say, no, we're not going to. What the Russians are going to say is, what you're going to do? Because we're not going to stop. We're going to win this war. What capacity do you have to stop us? The Russians they're calling the question. They're putting everything to question. The Russians are saying, look, you have decided to destroy us. You can play all of these games you want to. Oh, there we go. He's back. There we go. It's Mark Sleboda. All right, let's continue. We were talking about we got cut off, but we're back. All right, we were talking about the battlefield, Mark.
Yes. So with Pokrovsk finishing up, right? Russian forces are also already moving further towards a little bit further to the north, northeast towards Konstantinovka, the end of that last defensive line. And also further to the north, Russian forces are also in the beginnings of assault on Seversk, which is the Kiev regime's last defensive position in the north of the Donbass area. And that will open the way, taking the Liman area, the Izium Liman area to the north of Slavyansk much easier. And all of this is coming at a time to form a perfect big battle in the autumn as Russia begins moving on that last defensive line, Slavyansk, Kramatorsk, Konstantinovka, really from three different directions, from the north, from the south, and from the east, all converging more or less on the same time. So this looks like a very carefully timed movement on what will be the Kiev regime's last stand in the Donbass this autumn.
Might I add something to this? And in additionally, putting pressure everywhere and getting to that last stance. Not because, don't get me wrong, the U.S. will probably still try to send weapons. It'll come at a time when the amount of weapons is starting to weaken, and the likelihood is they won't be as well armed as they would be had you had that battle earlier. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, there's no question that they're really suffering from a lack of arms across the board, right? Whether we're talking armored vehicles to bring troops to and from the front, armor, they are supposedly getting in batches, 49 Abrams, older Abrams that were already retired from Australia, but that's not enough, and they're not getting armor from anywhere else. They're not getting it from Germany, from the U.S., from the U.K. They've exhausted that. The National Interest did a piece just over a week ago talking about how Russia has decimated the American Abrams that were sent earlier to the Kiev regime. That out of 31, they have at most 4 left, which is really, bad statistically, of course. But overall, they just did not perform well in the Ukrainian environment. They're too gas guzzling, too heavy, too maintenance intensive, and the supplies of ammunition and spare parts was always a problem. So the shortages of artillery is now reaching critical levels. They're just having to rely on drones for everything, and drones can't do everything. And they're starting to suffer a shortage of FPV drones as well, as Russia steps up its efforts to hunt down and destroy this, shall we say, dispersed network of underground workshops that is kind of artisanally constructing drones from Western parts, and still Chinese parts that are bought by Western countries and have to go through an extra middleman because China has cut Ukraine off directly from drone purchases. But let's say that this situation suddenly reversed itself and the West magically had large numbers of artillery and tanks and armored vehicles appear that they no longer have, and sent them to the Kiev regime. At this point, it wouldn't really make much of a difference because of the manpower woes, right? We've already talked about that. They simply don't have enough people. And that it's not only a number, it is quantity, but it is also quality, because all of the people that were motivated, that were experienced and trained, they've suffered such terrible attrition at this point that there's very few of them left. It's a hollowed out, much weaker military force than it was even a year ago, but certainly more than 2 years ago. And I would say that Russia is advancing as slow as they are, which is faster than they've been moving ever before, only because they're so concerned about casualties and properly, assimilating the areas that they're moving through at this point and firming up all of their logistics. They're comfortable at the pace that they're going. They don't feel a rush because of Trump's insane pronouncements and threats and I don't know.
Get something done in 10 days, Mark. That's all they got. It's over in 10 days.
Yeah, Russia is not concerned about what Donald Trump thinks about the battlefield on Ukraine at this point. So in the last week, just over a week ago, the Kiev regime's legislative body, the Rada, just approved over 60s for conscription into the battlefield. Men over the age of 60. Think how bad things are that they have to do that. Pensioners, right? Your retired grandfather is being sent to die, for this regime at this point. That is what is happening. And it's not like he has a choice in the matter. He's being snatched off the streets. So it's at this point, it's almost pitiable. It's a very bad situation, and whatever you may think of the regime, and I don't think anything good of it, this is such a tragedy for the Ukrainian nation, for the people, being used and churned up like this. It gives me no pleasure.
It's the ultimate. I mean, this is the empire. It is the ultimate in cannon fodder. It is saying, what kills me is these people saying supporting Ukraine or standing with Ukraine. And here's what I have to say. I hope they never support or stand with me, because if supporting and standing with Ukraine is ensuring that everybody dies ultimately, basically, that there's no men left, there's nobody left, there's just going to be a nation of basically a lot of people who are severely injured. The people that can't fight anymore, that got a leg missing, they're blind, their ears are blown off, whatever. So when this is said and done, you're going to have a nation, or whatever you have, whatever's left of this thing, with a lot of people who are very expensive to keep alive because they'll need caretakers. You're going to have a nation of people who, where are they going to have jobs and things like that to take care of them? Even Hungary or Poland really want to take a piece of this, because if you get a piece of this, you got a broken up, impoverished mess. With if they come under you, now you've got a bunch of people who are sick and broken and torn to shreds, who you have to provide pensions for. Who'd want that?
When the Soviet Union dissolved, Ukraine had a population of around 50 million people. That population right now is probably closer to 25 million. That's somewhere between 30 and 25 million. Between emigration because of simply the bad economic and political conditions over a decade span, to the fleeing in mass to the west from East Ukraine from 2014 on, then more mass migration, both west and east, once Russia intervened in 2022 in the Ukrainian civil conflict. And now you have, the conflict itself, and the population has just shrunk and continues to shrink. And I mean, we're beyond the point of demographic crisis. We're to the point of demographic catastrophe. There is really no recovering for a future Ukrainian nation from this. Nothing like in the shape that they were. They go from being a large country population-wise in Europe to being not. And even after the conflict ends, it's very hard to see, in any areas outside of Russian control, whether people will want to stay there. If they're able to go to the West, they will go to the West. If they're of a mind, to be in Russian controlled area, they will leave that area for the East. So the future, it is a terrible thing. There was nothing wrong with the idea of an independent Ukrainian state and nation, but it was captured through this twin evils of this internal Galician Banderite fascism, this West Ukrainian ultra-nationalist fascist ideology, and at the same time becoming a useful geopolitical tool for U.S.-led Western global hegemony. And the two found and met each other, and they both, brought a death sentence to the idea of an independent Ukrainian state and nation.
Yeah, and I would argue they brought a death sentence to the idea of U.S. hegemony too, in a lot of ways. But we shall see where this goes. Now, let me ask you something, Mark. I got a little bit of different of a take on the whole Ursula von der Leyen thing, because people are like, Trump just completely fleeced them. Well, in theory, yes. In reality, he made a deal for, we're going to get $750 billion, and they're going to spend that in the next 3 years or something in energy. They don't spend that in 3 years in energy now, and they'd have to stop buying from nowhere. It's not going to happen. Okay. Oh, and they're going to give us $600 billion in investment. And even von der Leyen's got to admit, well, we're just hoping maybe the corporations that are being shut down and impoverished and that they can't continue to operate because of deindustrialized. Well, we're hoping they'll do it, but they won't. So in reality, Trump did. I mean, if he had gotten the 600 billion and the 750 billion, that would in fact be, oh, he really took them to the cleaners. He ain't get nothing. He ain't getting it, not getting it, not happening. I think what they did was locked him into the Ukraine anti-Russia project. But he ain't getting, this mystery money. He'll never see it. So did he really take them to the cleaners if he ain't getting a dime of it anyway? Or we or whoever? I don't know.
Yeah, so there's a raging battle going on. This is a battle that has even broken into the Western media. Politico, in the mainstream media, had an article 3 days ago. The EU's fantasy $750 billion energy promise to Trump. So, meaning that they don't have $750 billion to spend on energy. And the U.S. doesn't have $750 billion worth of energy to sell them either. Not spare. So, and then there's also the question of this, some $600+ billion of investment, but it's not investment by the EU. It's not even investment by the EU member states. It's supposedly private investment, of which Ursula von der Leyen in the EU has absolutely no control over. All you EU businesses, yeah, sure, yeah, we promised that you would all go and invest in the US, so you go do that, right? I mean, that's it. This is, to a very large extent, a PR exercise. Now, that's not to say that the EU still didn't kowtow in such a shameless way, right? I mean, we're talking a little couch pocket puppy thing that rolled over on its belly, just showing up its belly, to Trump in an absolutely pitiable way. Right, not even something that you want to pet. You're just like, that's all your jangly bits are hanging out. No, it's kind of pitiful, right? The EU has just quite obviously, sacrificed all of its independence, its sovereignty, its dignity.
Darn it, Mark is frozen again. Come on, Mark, please. He had just gotten to the EU sacrificing their dignity. Darn it. Let's try this again. We don't want to sacrifice our dignity. All right. Sorry about this, gang. We got a few more minutes left, but look, you got to do this. The intelligence agencies got to make their money too. They got to earn a living too, and they earn a living by doing stuff like that. So let's cross our fingers and hopefully we'll hear Mark back in a second. But I do think that's why it's good for various people to come on and various discussions. That's why yes, you may go to one channel and they'll talk about the Trump thing, but most people are talking about it in the context of Trump took advantage of the EU, right? In theory, yes. Oh, there we go. There's Mark. Okay, Mark. Ooh, where's Mark? There we go. Okay, the EU has just lost their dignity. If you freeze again, we'll stick you and just come back.
The internet gods are really unhappy with us.
CIA's got to make a living too, Mark. The CIA's got to eat too. Okay, go ahead. They just lost. Doggone it. We're having a bad time here. I don't know what's going on. Oh, there you go. Good, you're back.
Right. Okay. One more time into the breach. So
yeah,
not only the EU as a whole, but obviously the EU member states for the most part have adopted this strategy for dealing with Trump administration 2.0. One of the consequences of the first administration was a big deterioration of the transatlantic relationship, the relationship between the US and Europe. Quite obviously, Trump hates the largely liberal, in American terms, European leaders, and they hate Trump, right? Most of them openly endorsed his political opponents, the Democrats in the US, or even Republicans who were running against him at one point. And they hate him, and he has nothing but contempt for all of them as well. So they really feared that Trump might just completely walk away from NATO as the institutional embodiment of that transatlantic relationship. So the way that they have
It's a struggle today, folks, but we're somehow there we go. The way that they have continue.
the way that they have chosen to deal with this, to prevent a repeat of this rupture of the transatlantic relationship, is to just kowtow, be such obsequious sycophants to Trump that they don't have any arguments with him. They just roll over and play dead and give him, or at least publicly make obeisance and make declarations that they're giving him anything that he wants. A lot of these deals are set for years into the future, right? Yes, all this money will be invested in the U.S. within 10 years, long after Trump is gone, and it makes no difference whatsoever. Because that was one of the things with the Japanese deal. Yes, over 10 years, all of this, and Trump will be long gone by then. So these
5%
I think
budget.
I think a large portion of this is performative theater to give Trump the stage to strut around and claim victory in, and that he's doing something, all the while counting that he'll be gone at a minimum within 3.5 years, right? So that is what the Europeans have done, whether Starmer or Macron or Merz has been meeting with him. Zelensky initially wasn't playing along, but he was quickly smacked into line and instructed on how they're going about this by Macron and Starmer. To be brought back into Trump's graces by, as Trump himself said it, right? They're lining up to kiss my ass. That's what those were his words, not mine, right? That's the way he wants it. He likes playing the God Emperor. He likes holding court, and he wants everyone to come to his court and pay court to him. The actual substance of it is not as important as the sense of perception and narrative, which conversely is a very postmodern ideology for Donald Trump. He's it's very woke, in a way. It's very intersectional. But that, I believe, is.
Come on, Mark. You're frozen. Unfreeze, Mark. Let's all get together and focus on unfreezing Mark. There we go. Okay.
Yeah.
You believe
the 15% tariffs alone will be very hard for European businesses, for their export marts to deal with. It alone
crushes the car industry. All right, Mark is frozen a little bit, but we think he's going to come back. Come on, Mark. Everybody focus. We got to get Mark back. Yeah. New? Nope, nope, nope. All right, Mark. If you can hear me, let's kick Mark, and Mark can come right back in. No, Mark. All right, we're going to kick him from the studio, and hopefully he can jump back in. Yeah, I don't know what's happening, but we're doing pretty good for the most part. But now things seem to be slowing up. So if we get Mark in, we'll try to do another 5 minutes, and we might have to wrap things up. Um, I think we're just, get how it is with internet. Yeah, okay, let's continue. All right, we're struggling, but we're there. All right, Mark, let's see how this works out.
Yeah. So the deindustrialization of Europe as a whole is commencing. And at the same time, they are, kowtowing and making promises that they can never keep to Trump to keep him happy. And I'm sure that if not him, then people within his administration understand that these aren't real promises either. But again, it's all performative. Everything with Trump seems more about the strutting around the stage and the performance than it does the actual substance.
And, the whole thing was there because now what you see is all the talk when he was running was performative. Trump could say things, I'm going to be the peace president, I'm going to do this, that, and everybody would go, oh my gosh, can you believe what Trump said? That's all it was about. And now that he's in, I often look at Trump and I feel like Trump's swimming hard. He's paddling hard. He's treading water hard to keep his head above the water. I feel like a lot of the things that Trump says, like the 10 days, has nothing to do with Russia. That's about the Lindsey Graham people and all of that biting at his heels, and he's trying to keep them off. And I don't think he's really got a plan. I think it was like, oh my God, what am I going to do? Okay, I'll say 10 days. That'll get him off my back for 10 days. And then I'll come up with something then. It seems like that's the way Trump operates sometimes.
Yeah, I'm not sure whether this is some type of real pressure from shall we say, the neocon set. As far as I understand, that whole Lindsey Graham bill was just put on pause. Like right. I don't see that there's any immense pressure on it. There's pressure coming at him from multiple directions, but a lot of it is probably coming from the people within his own administration. It's quite obvious that not only does he not have a plan, but his administration doesn't have a plan. Not only on the conflict in Ukraine, but on just about everything else. There is no coherent and agreed upon foreign policy vision. There are competing people within his administration, within the blob, the deep state, the permanent bureaucracy, that come and present different situations and different policy options to him. And he doesn't seem to have one set direction. He tacks with what he thinks is the public win. It often seems like with again one direction, one in the other, one in the other. There's nothing coherent. There's no coherent strategy. There's not even a coherent vision. It's just Trump off the seat of his pants, tacking one way, then the other. Whether that is due to his own doubts and knowledge, or simply being convinced by who he talked to 15 minutes ago, that he just keeps, and yeah, I mean, he may think that he's strutting around the stage, but I think you're right. I mean, he's treading water at this point. He has proclaimed that everything is a victory, and almost nothing has been. I mean, Iran is the perfect case in that, right? I mean, those enrichment facilities were obliterated. You can't say that they're not obliterated. If you dare suggest that they're not obliterated, you're not a patriot. You're attacking our military. And then the reality comes out. Most of the 2 out of 3 of those enrichment facilities didn't really take that much damage, and Iran could build a nuclear weapon right now if they wanted to, right? I mean, that is the assessment that has emerged. But you still can't tell that to Trump. I mean, again, he much like Zelensky, it is all narrative. He is the emperor with no clothes. And there's certain things that there's lots of truths that you can't tell him. I mean, I don't like touching this at all. I think it's a third rail, particularly for someone who is a veritable outsider now like me. But this whole Jeffrey Epstein thing, I mean, he rode that whole Jeffrey Epstein bit into the White House to a very large degree. And then he turns around and, oh, that's not me. That's the Democrats. It's their hoax. It's their thing. And all of his supporters are like, what? What? I mean, that is what he could, I think he could tack on multiple other things, you know, pretending that he beat the Houthis, pretending that he beat China in a trade war, you know, pretending that he bombed Iran into submission, you know, but the Jeffrey Epstein thing, going 180 on that is just not something that even the MAGA base that is most willing to make any excuses and justifications for just about anything he does. That one, I think, really smacked them upside the face, undeniably, with, you know, who Trump really is. And I'm continually flabbergasted after his first administration that anyone allowed themselves to be fooled into thinking he was going to be everything different the second time around. I don't understand it, but, you know.
Here's the thing. I think at the end of the 10 days, Trump does what he usually does. First of all, he can't do 100% on China because he put himself in the same position that he was in a few months back. And I don't think Trump, and the hell would he get out of that one? I don't think he does that. I think Trump at the 10 days puts some insignificant, you know, Russia can't export, I don't know, you know, lemongrass or some extract or something like that, 100% on that. And then calls it, yes, now that they can't export lemongrass extract, they are completely destroyed. Their economy will be obliterated. We put the strongest, most powerful sanctions on Russia that nobody's ever seen sanctions like this. These are the strongest sanctions ever on lemongrass extract. I mean, that's, to me, that's the usual thing he does, because it would be suicide, economic. Well, let me say this, one other thing. You said he doesn't have a military plan. Clearly, he has no economic strategy. Well, he does every morning, and by afternoon, it seems to have changed.
Yeah, his economic strategy is, just absolutely incoherent. Again, the fallacy of presenting that because he was a New York shady real estate developer of very questionable, you know, business acumen, that he somehow can run, the largest macro economy in the world. You know, I mean, that's just, it's just completely false. And he's proven that again. And his fantastical belief in the tariff heavy presidency, in, you know, the late 19th century of William McKinley, that's some kind of golden age utopia that he can return to just by imitating McKinley's tariff policies on the world, and that will, you know, make everything okay for the US. It's absurd, really. I mean, that is not a coherent economic policy, and the number of reversals and defeats that he's already suffered with it. Yes, he can tariff imports from Russia at 100%. That will really affect the U.S. far more than it does Russia. I mean, like, one of the biggest imports the U.S. gets from Russia is its uranium. And Russia will find plenty of other buyers out there for uranium in the world. And the U.S. will have to pay more for whatever uranium it gets. If we take a look, right, it can't reopen a trade war with China that it just lost. I mean, he could, but it would be stupid. And it would just lead to another even bloodier repeat. And if he goes then to punish India, right? If he doesn't punish China, but does punish India, the other biggest purchaser of Russian oil, then the U.S. will permanently geopolitically lose India, you know, in part of their...
Kind of a good thing for Russia, don't you think?
It is. That's why Russia is supremely confident in this situation. They understand that Trump has no cards, that whatever he does, it will ultimately hurt the U.S. and the U.S. hegemony's geopolitical interests more in a relative scale than it will hurt Russia. Russia's just not concerned. They're showing no. And Medvedev's casual banter back and forth with him and Lindsey Graham and just completely dismissing this whole thing is indicative of that. I mean, and Trump himself admitted, yes, Russia has managed to survive, and he didn't say it, but even thrive, growing at a faster clip than the US through all these sanctions. But now I'm going to sanction the whole rest of the world to force them into stop trading with you. Yeah, good luck with that. I mean, good luck. That's all I'm going to say. If you can't sanction China and you can't sanction, tariff China, you can't tariff India, then who are you going to tariff? Your other allies, Turkey and Saudi Arabia, who are the other big purchasers of Russian energy? No cards. He's got no cards. He's got no leverage. He's got no military leverage. He's got no economic leverage. And just today, he was again making threats through the U.S. ambassador to the UN that the Ukraine conflict will end with an unconditional, unilateral, ceasefire by August 8th. No, it's not. And what are you doing to yourself by once again setting these types of deadlines and making promises that you can't keep? Ultimately, Trump will do what he always does, is to create some kind of distraction, right? That's something else to drive the news cycle away from his, he may level sanctions on Russia, and he's already leveling tariffs on India, right? 25%. He's leveling tariffs on BRICS of 10% across the board. He's going after Brazil with 50%. And he's trying to do all of this at the same time. And if anyone believed he was actually sincere in really wanting peace in Ukraine for peace's sake, and he was only threatening one of these things at a time, then there is a potential that he might have swayed Modi or Lula individually to a certain degree. But by threatening and going after all of them at the same time, not only about the trade with Russia, but on general tariffs, and going after Lula just because the Brazilian courts are after Bolsonaro, and then going after all of them because BRICS is helping countries trade in each other's national currencies to get around using the dollar, and he sees that as an anti-American attack on the U.S. It's a cluster F. And he's just making himself out to be impotent and irrelevant. Yes, the Western countries, one by one, are lining up, and at least publicly, right? We won't talk the substance of these deals, right? And first of all, there's not deals. This is extortion, right? This is heavy-handed stuff that will have repercussions down the line, right? Because even the U.S.'s allies will remember how the humiliating way that this was imposed on them. But let's ignore the substance. South Korea, Japan, Europe, these other, they're all paying obeisance. But there's a whole portion of the world that simply won't play along with that. And they're at some point just going to throw up their hands and said, fine, then we don't trade with the U.S. anymore, and we're done with this. I mean, I think Brazil and India are really reaching that point. And neither of these countries have big trade surpluses with the United States to begin with. His whole premise for going after them with tariffs is rather silly to begin with. It obviously reads more as political and geopolitical punitive actions, as punishment, rather than any sound or coherent economic policy.
Yeah, I'm with you. It's becoming unhinged and absurd, and I think I just think I'm with you. I've been saying this for a while. I think can't. At some point, it gets to the point where it's like people just say, "I got to cut it off," right? Now, if I'm a country right now and Trump's doing, they're doing tariffs or not, they're not. He's doing no tariffs on my country. I look at the U.S. and I say, I bring my important business people in. I bring in my money people, and I say, look, we have to plan as quickly as possible for not doing business with the U.S. Even if they're not doing us now, that's coming. And if they are, and we're being sanctioned, we say, look, they're coming apart. This thing's come unhinged. What do we sell to the U.S.? Let's start looking for customers to redirect it. And as I redirect the customer, I just tell the U.S., okay, thanks. And bit by bit, until I'm not selling them anything anymore. And when they call me, I'll say, look, guys, I'm selling to somebody else without a tariff. Thanks a lot. Have a nice day. I don't like formally scream I'm not doing business with the U.S. because then Trump's going, I'm going to tariff you $1 million. I don't even need that. But I'm guaranteed that a lot of countries are thinking like me, and they're saying we got to redirect our stuff away. We got to do business. No thanks.
That's the whole business of BRICS, right? At least publicly, BRICS is not anti anyone. They're not anti anything. They're just trying to ignore the U.S. and deal with each other and pretend that the United States isn't there. And to an increasing degree, it's working. And his increasing anger and frustration over all of this is a sign that it's working. And that's exactly what the former Russian president and Prime Minister Dmitry Medvedev pointed out. If, this great and powerful leader of the United States is feeling so angry and put out and outraged and desperate over what we're doing, then we're doing something right.
100%. All right. Before we get going, it looks like Mark is back to stay, but that's great because now we get to show you something very important, and that is the Real Politique with Mark Sleboda. That's right. Go to boosty.to/The Real Politique. And as you can see, that's where you can find all of Mark's good works. And of course, you can subscribe and become a subscriber. We are up to 145 subscribers right now. We were shooting for 150, but 150 is done. We're going to get there. We're pushing for 175 subscribers. So let's get 175 subscribers. You can be one of them. We just need another 30. And make sure, whether you're a subscriber or not, which you should be, but make sure you go there to keep up with everything Mark is doing. Mark, thank you very much. Certainly appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to hang out with us here at my humble channel.
Thanks for having me, Garland.
All right. Talk to you again soon. Thanks a lot, everybody. Share, follow me on Rockfish and Rumble and all that kind of stuff. Share this on all your social media platforms. If you can afford it, just, PayPal, buy me a coffee, Patreon, one of those things. And of course, as you see going across the bottom, the last thing is my P.O. box. There are people that send everything from people send donations, people send magazines, people send books, people send just letters to say, hey, Garland, thanks a lot. It's all great. So thanks a lot. Oh, by the way, I don't know if you guys have seen this, but there's something coming up I'm going to go to. Let me find this. The gray zone. Where is it? The gray zone has, I can't find it. There's an event coming up. Let me try this. There's a zone. Let me try maybe their Substack. How about that? There's an event coming up and I can't, is this it? Oh yeah, this is cool. I'm going to be there. So check this out. For those of you who may not have heard of it, share screen. There's something called Icarus Fest. Check this out. This is pretty cool. And this is join us at Icarus Fest 2025, a celebrative dissident journalism. Jimmy Dore, Max Blumenthal, Aaron Matei, Katie Halper, Savvy Savs, Anya Pamper. Look at that, Wyatt Reed, on and on and on. Christian Parenti, Kit Clarenberg, right? It's going to be all day, August 23rd. That's going to be at the Williams Center, Riverlow Theater in Rutherford, New Jersey. Get your tickets now. So anybody who wants to go to the Gray Zone Substack and get all the info on that, I'm going to be there. I'm sure a lot of people are going to be there. It's going to be a lot of fun. Have a great day. I'm out.